Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC recap of the LEC Summer Split Week 1. There's a lot of action to unpack, obviously, with it being a super week, making it 3 match days. So I'm gonna try to keep the summaries of each game that was played a bit shorter than usual, but obviously also supplement them with some clips and share my thoughts on the team's performances, my initial thoughts as well towards the end. We started the weekend with G2 versus Mad Lions, which has become kind of a staple now, and I quite like that this is becoming a trend in the LEC. It always sets the tone well for a split. Fans know what to look forward to. It becomes a tradition like this, something I very much appreciate. Unfortunately for Mad Lions, what also is becoming a tradition is that G2 wins these matches. G2 decided to pick a Viego top for Wunder. The rest was relatively standard. I think what we've seen more now is Viego more towards the mid lane overall, at least before the split started in the other regions. The start of the game was relatively neutral. G2 got the opening pick versus Humanoid, but Matt fought back. So that game went pretty even for a while. Both teams were choosing their objective, what they were going to go for. I do think, though, that you could see as the game progressed, G2 was finding their rhythm, finding that comfort zone that they wanted to be in. And G2 did get, top river control, which is pretty important if you want to get those heralds, if you want to get the Baron later on. Mad Lions on the other hand getting those drakes. However, things definitely took a swing in G2's advantage around the fight that I will show you in a clip.
QEs or Ezreal, then they should be favored. Wunder's on the side.
Gonna be big. He's gonna try to start to the stun. Maybe he can get Elyoya or Carzzy. That's gonna be the big target. That's the Rumble now locked up. Yango's in the midst of everything, just isolating Carzzy, making sure Carzzy can't do damage. Now that's the shutdown. If Wunder lives through this fight, he gets the reset. Now he's the Rumble. He can move through if he needs to.
Humanoid
Yango's going in. Humanoid going down. G2 have...
And off the back of this, G2 not only got the Drake, but also got the Baron. Very comfortable position for G2 to be in. Mad Lions didn't really know how to climb back into the game from here on out, and G2 won that game. And then the second game was Astralis versus SK Gaming. A bit of an odd pick for Astralis, who picked the Trundle in the jungle. It's become a meme over the weekend a bit, with Zanzara especially pleading heavily on Twitter in favor of the Trundle. But what stood out most is Promiscu picking a Hex Flash rune, which was not allowed as was announced by the LEC because of the existing bug with that rune. What happened was that Promiscu was told in-game that he wasn't allowed to use Hex Flash. I interviewed him about this actually as well. And if you want to check out that interview, I'll link it to you above that direction actually. Where you can find the interview. It'll also be in a thumbnail at the end of this video. That was a bit weird, but it didn't really give any disadvantage, I would say. Obviously, you would prefer to have a different rune in that position, but overall, he was not playing very well in that game. In general, that game was very ugly, I would say. It was not a pretty experience. Very messy, both teams going in at weird times, and then the fight being turned around by the other team, but then overextending and then fighting back. It's not something I particularly enjoyed watching. It was mayhem, which, if you like chaos, is fun, I suppose, and from an entertainment value, I guess the game was really fun, but I am somebody who wants to see good League of Legends, and that was definitely not it. So eventually, Astralis just fought their way to get the Elder Drake, which was a big turning point for them in the game, because, I don't know, I guess SK had been having a small advantage, but in this game it was very clear that anything could happen, and Astralis just ended up winning that game, but I don't think that this is a game that's specifically noteworthy in the LEC at all. Then we had Rogue versus Excel, and I think that this was one of the lowest kill games in the LEC this year, if not in the entire history of the LEC as a franchise, because nothing much happened except for Rogue literally choking SK by playing around the map very well. Rogue was moving around to objectives and applying pressure as they usually do. Excel was not doing anything about it. And that was really strange to see. You think that at some point, okay, Excel, you realize that you're falling behind further and further. Do something about it. But they didn't. This was probably the most comfortable victory for any team that I've seen in a while, because they didn't really have to fight for it. All they had to do was move around to the objectives, which again, they did very well. It's something the Rogue is known for, to do very well. A very comfortable victory for them against XL. Then we had Vitality versus Schalke 04, which is obviously a very interesting match to start the weekend with. Well, to start the split with for them, I should say, because Vitality revamped their roster. Schalke 04 made changes to their roster as well, and it proved to be a pretty one-sided affair in my opinion. Schalke picked Thalia and a Renekton mid and a Sivir, which was really weird, whereas Vitality just chose to go with Viego in the mid lane for leader, and that proved to be a good choice because leader got first blood with that, and from there Vitality just simply snowballed their early lead very quickly. They played very aggressively, made many kills across the map, and even if Schalke got a kill, there was always a kill, at least one kill in return from Vitality, and you could see how well Vitality knew how to snowball this lead. Towards the end especially, you could see their coordination in the fights, and I have a clip to show you just what I mean.
And I'm sure that Vitality is not going to allow it, as they now have their eyes set on Neon.
Limit's looking for a pass just somewhere on the other side of the map right now. He has the longest flank in the history of flanks. I'm pretty sure he could have walked there a little bit quicker as he does get into the backside. On the front line now, he's popped his stopwatch, and Schalke is still able to take this fight, but Leader is beginning to get the resets. He will chase them down. Heartbreaker coming out, Kire going down as well. Leader steals away the Thalia, jumps across the wall. Neon and Broken Blade, the only two remaining members here for Schalke and Vitality. Well, Schalke look for a fight. You know, they look to try and find some control.
And the final game of the opening day of the LEC Summer Split was Fnatic versus Misfits, which in my opinion was probably the most exciting one of the day, because both teams had their moments. Fnatic started off really strongly. They got ahead in kills and they got ahead in gold, but the game from there on fell into a bit more chaos, which, as I've said before, is not something I particularly enjoy, especially if they are messy, which they were. Very reminiscent of Fnatic and Misfits' battles last year in the summer split as well. But from there on, you could see that Misfits started to find their courage and find their jam, I would say, because they wouldn't just go down quietly like XL did in their game against Rogue. They tried to find these picks against Fnatic and actually did find a few. And the reason why I'm saying that it was probably the most exciting one to watch for me is because Viteo, who played on the Akali, had an exceptionally good performance, had 2 quadra kills in the game against Fnatic. And yeah, I mean, at that point, he's just a hard carry, right? It's always going to be a team effort, and there's always going to be setups that allow somebody to pop off. But he was just playing phenomenally, and that's something I'm excited about, because I've advocated for a long time, give rookies at least 1 year to prove themselves, because they learn a lot in their first split, they implement it in their second split. Now, there are some caveats, obviously. Viteo had a very strong opening weekend last spring as well, and I'll touch more on this when I talk about my impressions of Misfits. But in general, it's just very cool to see that he is so capable of stepping up and not shy of making those plays, and I wouldn't do him justice if I did not show a clip. So here you go.
Gonna kick that one off.
He's saying Fnatic shouldn't take a straight up fight. That's not the Fnatic I know and love. Viteo off towards the side of this as Vander goes in. Dragon secured by Razzle. Grippo pops the stopwatch. Adam gets his first possession, dives in onto Viteo. Kobe trying to do the damage that he can. Kellerman sticks in. Viteo kills off Grippo. Kobe so low on the backline. He'll be taken out by Upset. Now it's Nisky and Upset versus the world, but Misfits continue to push forward. A quadra kill for Viteo. Add one more on the plate. Here.
And to put it simply, Misfits won that game in a tug of war that was led by Viteo. Then we went to the second day and we opened with XL versus Astralis. Astralis sticking with their Trundle in the jungle. I guess they won their game versus SK, but it wasn't pretty and everybody was still raising question mark about it. Maybe it was just a comfort pick for Zanzara to get the week going, to start rolling, you know, and feel that comfort. But anyway, the early game was very quiet. XL maybe had a small lead, but nothing really noteworthy to me. It wasn't as skirmishy as Astralis versus SK, but still quite scrappy. I guess you could say that both of these teams were playing better than they were on day one, but that's not necessarily a high bar to set, so yeah, you know. Astralis did get ahead though through fights. Magi Felix popped off on Akali. The champion is something that we probably will see banned a bit more heading into week 2. But as somebody who has, who like my brain has melted away watching endless Orianna versus Victor matches or Nazi or whatever in the spring split, I'm just happy to see something different, and Assassins are pretty exciting to watch. So for now, I'm still enjoying seeing Akali in the mid lane and popping off as well. So Excel had very little to say as the game progressed, in my opinion. Astralis just played comfortably. They played well. Excel, although as I said, they did play a bit better, it wasn't enough, and Astralis won that game. Then we had SK Gaming versus Misfits, and obviously SK Gaming, as they were in their first game, by the way, they were playing with 2 hours, I think his name is pronounced, the substitute mid laner, because Blue was unfortunately for SK Gaming and for himself, obviously, hospitalized with some medical issues, but he should be getting better, and he should be back for week 2. But anyway, yeah, it was the first Gwen we saw in this game, which was exciting. It also showed that Gwen is ridiculous. Janex got to play it in the top lane, who is a pretty good top laner, right? I gave him quite some praise last split. And on Gwen as well, he was playing pretty well in my opinion. The early game was just very quiet between both of these teams. I think that of all the players on SK, it was 2 hours actually who played the best, who had 2 good roams on top. He was playing the Lucian, got kills against Misfits, but Misfits proved to be resilient, and Misfits proved to be a team that knew how to, I wouldn't necessarily say counter Gwen, because she's very hard to counter, and you could still see that some of the engages were either nail-bitingly close or she got something in return when Misfits tried to go for a play. But other than that, what I meant to say is that I think Misfits knew, okay, we are up against the Gwen, which is difficult to play against, but we know how we can win this game through some other ways, and they climbed back into the game. And another great performance from them, I think. Kobe was playing pretty well, in my opinion, in this game, which is refreshing to see, because I don't think in the spring split he was particularly noteworthy. But yeah, some glimpses of hope for Misfits, maybe for a longer term than just the opening weekend there, and they picked up the win. Then we had Vitality versus Rogue, which was an exciting matchup because Vitality looked super strong, obviously, in the first day. Rogue didn't need to do much, but still a very respected team within the LEC. I think Rogue also saw Misfits beat a Gwen and thought, well, if they can do it, we can do it as well. So SLT on Vitality got to play the Gwen, and the game started off pretty aggressively, both teams trading blows. Vitality got the first advantage, but Rogue, in Rogue style, just moved around the map, trying to pick off members of Vitality, and was successful in doing so. Hansama was playing very well in this game for Rogue. Larsen, who in the early game had to die a few times because Vitality collapsed on him a few times, and maybe here and there he was also not respecting them well enough, but he fought his way back into the game and got kills, got those items rolling, so that was very good for them. But to give an idea of how explosive this game was, in terms of kills, at 15 minutes there were 4 kills for Vitality and 10 kills for Rogue, which for Rogue standard especially is nuts. This is a team that generally likes to take it slower. They can play fast if they want to, as they've shown now versus Vitality, obviously, but generally speaking, they try to take it slower. And yeah, from there on, I do think that Vitality capitalized on a few mistakes that Rogue made well. Rogue a bit sloppy, and making it themselves a bit more difficult than they should have. But from there, Rogue just slowed it down, got back in the driver's seat slowly but steadily, as they know how to do, and won through team fights that were coordinated well. And I've got a little clip to show for that.
The backline will be a big deal. Eyes on the Gragas and Leona. That's the CC this team needs to buy space for their carries. Selfmade now running in. We may just have a smite fight on our hand. 2K getting lower. That one's going to get burned down, but Inspired manages to take it away. SLT throwing the ult out, but they've split up the entire team. It's now an absolute disaster. Selfmade still alive on the backside. Moving in, managing to grab a stun. SLT still going. The Gwen still alive. Goes Golden Crown Shot, untouched for now, but Rogue have taken the fight. Rogue turn it back in their favor, and they'll take out Crown Shot and shift their attention into the mid lane.
That's going to be a TP. 50 seconds on Vitality.
And the fourth match of the second day was Schalke 04 versus G2 Esports. Schalke 04 going with a Kokmo and Lulu combination, which is always a traditionally very strong combination because Lulu can just endlessly kind of be a pocket healer to Kokmo pocket protection, and whenever he gets dove, you just buff him, and whoever is diving, you polymorph them or whatever. And Schalke 04 had a good plan. I do think that from the start they knew exactly where to attack. Broken Blade was punishing Wunder repeatedly, and Kirai, the new jungler of Schalke 04, roamed top as well to help out. And from the start, it was clear that Wunder was not allowed to play this game, which worked out very well in the end for Schalke 04. G2 did push back a bit by getting the Drakes, but eventually, I don't know what's happening with whenever Schalke 04 plays against G2, but they always seem to win their first match, and this was no exception. Wunder had an exceptionally rough game. I think it went 0-7 towards the end, which is obviously very difficult, and a very good performance from Broken Blade in this game especially. But I do think that overall, yeah, I don't know. Schalke is such a difficult one to grasp, right? Losing that first game, playing not very well, and then beating G2. Granted, G2 was not playing in their best form either, but still, it's G2, high caliber players, and Schalke 04, 2 new players on the team. So good showing from Schalke 04 there, and probably something that will encourage them and energize them going forward in the next weeks as well. Then we had Mad Lions versus Fnatic, which was interesting because Fnatic picked the Olaf top lane for Adam, which is a signature pick, and everybody's super excited to see him play it in the LEC as well. And he actually did play very well with it as well in the laning phase, especially. He was dominating, I should say, against Armut, who struggled a lot to guess what to do against the Olaf. Adam knew the limits of the champion very well. However, thankfully for Armut, the rest of Mad Lions was playing very well on the other sides of the map. I think that Mad Lions did well in recognizing that they needed to ramp up the pressure quickly to kind of force Fnatic into a corner. And what you saw here was just, I don't know, at some points it just felt bad for Fnatic in a weird way, where you said, okay, that any mistake and Mad Lions would be there to punish it. Basically saying, okay, well, you slipped up once, now you're gonna die. And that is exactly what they did. You could see Mad Lions playing super well in the team fights, which is just good for me to see, that despite them having taken a break, obviously, after MSI, they only returned to practice, I think, last week, Tuesday. So only had a few days of practice. But already you could see that this machine was oiled again. And even if in the coming weeks, they maybe take it a bit easier. As I said in my preview video, actually, I thought that they would. And that maybe against Fnatic, there would be some pride on the line. Ultimately, I did predict Fnatic to win overall because I thought Mad Lions might take it a bit slower. But no, they didn't. And against Fnatic, they just won. But a great highlight of that typical great coordination in Mad Lions team fights was at the Baron fight at around 20 minutes into the game.
For late game, normally that might not be an option. But if you can get a Baron, or in the case of Humanoid, if you're ahead of the clock on items, Upset and Hylissang have to be so careful here. Going over the wall, just leaping in onto Upset, trying to buy as much space. Arma goes over as well, but their attention is split. You've still got 3 members stuck in the pit here. Whippo going forward, a bit of a scattered call coming in from Matt. Adam can just run straight into that pit, but I don't think he's going to. Elyoya flashing back over the wall. It is absolute chaos. Humanoid going back in, but it is the Baron over to the side of Matt. Oh. And now Humanoid just looking to style. That's Niski taken down. Humanoid still alive. Goes invisible, takes out Upset as well. It's the double going over to Carzzy. 1 kill going back to Humanoid. And now Whippo's in trouble too. He doesn't have a flash. The ghost now burned. He has to run for the hills. Elyoya just looking to finish the job. Everything again going in the favor of Mad Lions. It was a scrappy fight, but they get the Baron, they get the kills, and they're moving into the mid lane.
Humanoid absolutely styling on.
And on the third day, we started with XL versus Schalke 04. Schalke 04 again going for some interesting strategies, where they picked the Xin Zhao in the jungle with a Taric in the support position. XL answered with an interesting pick as well, picking Sejuani. Now, XL, I don't know. Yeah, so it was just a very rough game for them. It was weird to see Schalke perform as well, because, okay, so what happened was, in the first few minutes, Schalke 04 got a very early kill on Kreis, and his life was just made miserable, and he wasn't really allowed to play the game. But even though more kills went into Schalke's way, and they showed against G2 that they knew exactly how to snowball from here and take the game and win eventually. Against XL, for some reason, they just didn't know what to do. They walked around with a lead aimlessly, gave XL ample time to just get back into the game and get their own experience, get their own items, get back in like on the same level. And you could see that XL knew, wow, they're actually gonna give us this chance, and XL took it very commendably. The game got pretty even again. A few good fights from XL got them ahead actually, and Schalke was just very uncoordinated with their fights. You could see XL splitting up Schalke very effectively. Schalke really threw this game, I would say, which is very confusing. Again, like, this team is so hard to gauge, but we'll get to that later. And XL won their game. Then we had Misfits versus Vitality. Vitality had a 1-1 score at this point, and Misfits had a 2-0 score, obviously chasing that 3-0 ending. It was a pretty good start for Misfits, in my opinion. They punished an over-aggressive Vitality. Misfits just used the lead to play aggressively themselves. You could see that instead of trying to control the game from there on out, they just thought, okay, well, we have a lead, might as well try to find more ways to get ahead, which they did very effectively. I think that for Vitality, this game was pretty frustrating because they, for a while, didn't really know how to make sure that Misfits couldn't snowball, but they kind of stabilized when it was too late. So Misfits ramped up their lead very quickly, and then from there on took it a bit slower. I would say like at around 30 minutes, you could see, okay, they're trying to slow it down a bit. And Vitality did this pretty well, I guess, in holding off that pressure. But by this time, it was already too late. The lead that Misfits had was not something that Vitality could realistically ever overcome. And just through the passage of time, Misfits chipped away at the base of Vitality and eventually just closed out the game. Astralis versus Mad Lions followed with, yeah, it's a pretty... it was a game. So it was a good start from Mad Lions, getting the first kills, and Astralis at this point was 2-0 up. So I guess you could say that in some way this was a big clash, because Mad Lions at the point was 1-1, and but it really wasn't that close. Mad had a good start, getting the first kills. Astralis did punch back with White Knight on Lee Sin, especially. That guy had an amazing opening weekend, especially playing on the Lee Sin. He was just carrying Astralis and holding on for big parts for them. But Mad kept the gold lead. Armut, even though White Knight was ahead in kills with 4 kills by playing all around the map, Armut just stayed in his lane and farmed and got gold. And that's how Mad Lions stayed ahead in the game. Even though when the game at times looked a bit even, Mad just decided to pull the trigger every now and then. And you could see, okay, if Mad wants to pounce... No, not really a pun intended, maybe a bit. They just are far superior than Astralis. And yeah, their aggression and their typical great team fights is just something I have to highlight again.
Right now, I'm at level 15. Magic Felix has still got the package. Kaiser is right around the corner with the ultimate in tow. Curtain call comes out, that tags the mid lane. A tag onto Zanzara as well as White Knight. It's picked up by Astralis, the second of the game. Magic Felix fires out the package, but it doesn't really do a whole lot as Kaiser is now stuck inside the pits, and this just feels like playing whack-a-mole, despite the fact Kaiser goes down. Zanzara is the next target, Promiscu the third. White Knight gets tagged by Humanoid, and the burst damage into the Hourglass buys enough time for the Lions to join the pack. White Knight is running for his life, and despite the setup, Mad Lions just needed the time for the team to arrive. That's the fourth. That's going to be another one here to Jesko. That's the ace as well.
And then we had SK versus G2. It was a messy early game from both teams, I have to say. G2 was just trying to apply pressure from all around the map. And SK was hitting back with treats, who had a pretty good game on the Nidalee. Obviously something that you like to see if you're an SK fan or on SK, because he made that role swap, right, from support to jungle. But at 15 minutes into the game, he had a 3-0 score, which was pretty good. But in the meantime, G2 was just getting the towers, applying map pressure very well. I think that overall, in this game, you can really see that, I don't know, just a difference in experience in playing with each other, especially because I think the treats, like I don't know, like a jungler like Oyoya, for example, with this lead, Mad Lions would know how to play around that lead and capitalize and snowball from there and find their points of pressure. But SK looked a bit messy. Jesse, as a support player, had a rough weekend overall, but in this game you could just see the engages weren't clean. G2 punishing it pretty well. In the end, it was just a pretty comfortable victory for G2, I would say, with SK making too many mistakes. And then the final game was between Rogue and Fnatic chose to go with a Karthus jungle, and Bwipo, instead of taking a flash, took a TP in addition to his smite, which was obviously something that we have not seen a lot of, and everybody was raising their eyebrows when they saw that. But Fnatic found, I guess, how they wanted to play this game. They started super aggressively. They rushed in and killed Rogue a few times, and even though Rogue did strike back and even up the kill scoreline in like after a while, Rogue just pretty lost at what to do. They didn't really know how to deal with what Fnatic was doing, and that is something that we have not seen a lot. We have not seen many teams that are so relentlessly aggressive, so punching on the door of Rogue repeatedly, that Rogue just doesn't really know what to do. Normally, Rogue knows exactly, okay, now we shift our pressure to this part of the map or this part of the map, and we make sure that we take our advantages here and here and here to get the best odds of climbing back into the game. But Fnatic was just everywhere, and Rogue was messy and scrappy and panicky, and that is something I have to commend Fnatic for. I'm not sure if that is something that they thought about for a very long time and really nailed, okay, this is what we're going to do against Rogue, or if this is just what they're going to try to do against other teams as well. But at least against Rogue, it seemed to work very well, and Fnatic won that game. And that brings us to the summer split standings after the first week of the LEC. In first place is Misfits, who are now 3-0, winning every single encounter of the weekend. Then in a shared second place, we have Astralis, G2, Mad Lions, and Rogue, each winning 2 games and dropping 1. Then we have Fnatic, Schalke 04, Vitality, and Excel in a shared 6th spot, each with 1 win and 2 losses. And in 10th place at the moment is SK Gaming, who lose every single game of their opening weekend and go down 0-3. And now for some thoughts on the team's performances in general. I think let's just start with Misfits at the very top, who did play very well, which is something that we also did see in the spring split. Afterwards, obviously, they struggled to find their identity. In the spring split, they had this really aggressive, scrappy style in the opening weekend, and from there on, didn't really change much. And the other teams polished their gameplay, got a lot cleaner, and became this, I don't know, this hardened shell that with all Misfits chaos couldn't really penetrate. I think that even though that is obviously always going to be caveats, I do think that this Misfits did not look as scrappy as they did in Spring Split. I think they did look more coordinated, but the big question mark is if they're going to be able to identify quickly how they're going to stabilize their gameplay and how they're going to carry this forward against future opponents. This weekend, for example, we saw Viteo being an incredibly important carry for the team. What if he gets locked down? What if he is not the one who is going to step up and carry the team? Resorg had 2 games where he performed pretty well and others decently. And Kobe had 1 game where he was playing pretty well, but it still seemed very much like the Viteo show. So what I want to see in the next weeks is how Misfits is going to use all the talent on their team to be able to diversify more, because betting on this one horse that is Viteo, I don't think is something that is going to work out well for them. Then we have Astralis, 2-1. I would have guessed that. Pretty impressive, I have to say, that they managed to go 2-1, even though their game against SK Gaming was pretty terrible. Astralis is a team, obviously, that is going to do their own thing at many times. I think that the highlight for me on the team the past weekend was absolutely White Knight on the Lee Sin. I do think, even though he's not like the absolute top lane in the LEC, I do think he was a bit underrated in the spring split, and a champion like Lee Sin shows that he is pretty decent actually, which is something I did not really expect. I didn't have really high expectations for them heading into the year at all. But now he did show especially that he can carry that team, which he did pretty well and pretty consistently in my opinion. Overall, I think that Astralis needs to work a bit more on their drafts. I don't think the Trundle is a very good decision, because even if it wins you games, I don't know, maybe it's a comfort pick which works out well against like lower ranked teams if you're playing against an Excel, but I don't think this is something that they can carry forward because teams are going to easily adapt to it. Yeah, and other than that, a very rough weekend, I would say, from Promiscu, who's obviously received a lot of criticism for performance in the spring split. And I think that it is something that they definitely need to step up as well in the bot lane, because other teams are gonna be able to snowball a lead that they acquired through killing him more efficiently than the teams they faced in this weekend. G2 then, I mean, 2-1 is not a big surprise for me. I do think what I would have thought more, especially that's obviously for the Schalke game, which they lost, is I did think they would be a bit more hungry for their wins in the opening weekend and then maybe take a step back, where they just, you know, because in the spring split they said, okay, we're going to take it slow, easy, and then ramp up, and then in the playoffs we're going to go full throttle, which ultimately they did not do in time, as is evident by Rogue and Mad Lions finishing ahead of them. But overall, I do think that G2 performed about as well as I expected. I think that Mickey had a good game. Caps was playing pretty well. Jankos was okay. Wunder had a great game, immediately followed by a horrible game. So overall, I mean, this is still a roster that has a lot of potential. I would still not predict them to not make Worlds or anything whatsoever, but yeah, about as what I expected. The Mad Lions, who surprised me a bit more. As I said in my prediction video, I thought they would go 1-2. They go 2-1. Pretty good. Their game against Fnatic was a pleasure to watch. This is a team, as I have also said before, even if they finish 6th in the rankings and barely make it to playoffs, I still expect them to make Worlds. But I don't think they're going to finish 6th. This is a team that evidently just knows how to win the game still. And that is all you need right now. And then Rogue. Yeah, their game of the final game of the weekend was obviously the big disappointment. But I think the highlight match for them was actually the one against Excel, where they just showcased, they really flexed their map knowledge very well again. It is against one of the weaker opponents in the LEC, obviously still, but recognizing that, and for them, it gave them a comfortable start. So I think that for them, pretty comfortable. Not many thoughts so far either. Fnatic, 1-2, which is something, I guess. I think that they are a team that wants to find out more what they need to do when they get a lead, which is what cost them one game in this weekend. But for them, I have to say I was positively surprised by Bwipo's jungling. I know jungle is mocked a lot at the moment for not being a very difficult role, but overall I think he still he played actually pretty well. Not like, okay, it's just a basic jungler farming, but he actually engaged well with the team. The jungle expert said that he made some weird pathing decisions, stuff like this, but I think overall when you look at team fights and impact on the team, he did still perform pretty well. Other than that, I think Adam in the top lane is a real treasure for Fnatic, and he showed that he is absolutely worthy of keeping up with other top laners in the LEC, so definitely a deserved place for him there. I still think that this is not a team that is gonna actively contest for the top spots, but just a fine performance for them, I guess. Schalke 04 is a really mixed bag. Very bad game in day 1, then a very good game day 2, then again a weird bad game on day 3. Just a team, I don't know, we'll just have to see how they develop, but I don't think that this team is gonna fly very high, but it's always going to be a team, I guess, that is going to be able to pack some punches. Broken Blade in the top lane was the standout performance for me. Very good top laner. Wouldn't be surprised if next year he goes maybe to a team that is going to make Worlds. We'll see about that. But yeah, Shulkin of here, fine. The team that interested me most in the opening weekend was Vitality, and I think that many people had their eyes on that team. After the first day, I saw many people say, oh wow, they're absolutely a top tier contender, and then obviously the next 2 games they lose. Early overreactions. I do not think still that this is a team that is gonna get a world spot at the moment. What I see with Vitality is something that I saw with Fnatic at the start of the year in the spring split. I see a lot of energy, I see a lot of potential, but it needs to be channeled consistently, and that is something that Fnatic did not manage to do, and it's going to be very interesting to see if Vitality does manage to do this. You have Leader and Selfmade, especially in that mid-jungle duo. You have players who want to go in, and they know how to go in, and they do it very well, but overall, yeah, it's just a lot of energy that you really need to channel, because otherwise it's going to get loose and it's going to go everywhere, and it's going to be uncoordinated, and it's how you're going to win games. Excel and SK, I'm going to bundle them as one. I think they performed about as I expected. Excel's win is good for them. This is a team that needs a lot of building, in my opinion, to even contest for a playoff spot, but that win is probably going to give them a lot of confidence. And SK Gaming, they were handicapped, obviously. Well, I don't want to say handicapped, but because 2 hours is necessarily a worse player than Blue is, but you're not going to get the same amount of practice if you have a last-minute substitute as when you have your original mid laner, right? So that's obviously rough for them. But overall, even if you take him out, if you take 2 hours out and would leave that out of the equation, I still think that SK Gaming performed about as I expected, which is not very well. This team synergy might be very great now that they have all the buddies on the roster who got along very well. But yeah, your synergy can be as good as you want. If that is not going to result in great team play and in great gameplay, then what are you really competing for, right? I will give them a small upside that I think that maybe I've underestimated what their cap is a little bit. So like I predicted them to be 10th or 9th, right? So maybe they would be able to get 8th if they get everything online, but so far about as disappointing as I thought they would be. And then we go to the most important part, obviously, of the recap, and that is the top 10 players in my LEC SuperFantasy lobby. If you haven't joined yet, obviously you're going to be behind a little bit if you join the lobby now, but there are many weeks left to be played, and if you see that towards the end, sometimes the difference in scores between the top players can be hundreds of points, you still absolutely have a chance of making it to the top towards the end. So if you still want to join the LEC SuperFantasy lobby, make sure to click the link in the description below and play against me and my other followers. But now let's highlight the top 10. In first place is Locowex with 681 points. Then we have Queen Dobrev with 661 points. Third place is Stipan with 652 points. Then we have Mavi with 626 points. Fifth is Faramir with 579 points. In sixth place is Sinaporovic with 563 points. Then Minotaurus at 563 points as well. In, I guess, a shared sixth place. Eighth spot is for the one Seidel. 553 points, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm very sorry if I mispronounce it. Then we have Witacast in 9th place with 520 points. And Lucky Reed in 10th place at 505 points. I do want to mention myself here that I'm very competitive. I'm in 11th place with 504 points. So 1 point behind, making it top 10. But I will redeem myself this weekend. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me a lot. I publish a lot of interviews from the summer split on this channel, as well as my previews and recaps, which you all can find. I have some very interesting interviews coming out later this week, either here on this YouTube channel or on in article form. And if you want to stay updated on article interviews, then make sure to follow me on Twitter so you can get the updates there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to check out the interviews I post, and I'll see you all on Thursday for my LEC preview for week 2 of the LEC.